The greatest mystery. In the Grand Archive of the Galactic Confederation sat an object that had baffled scholars for 3 centuries. The Vorton cannon, a weapon recovered from the ruins of an ancient battlefield, perfectly preserved but completely useless. The weapon itself was beautiful in a brutal sort of way. 2 meters long, constructed from an alloy that no modern species could replicate, covered in intricate engravings that told the story of the Vorton Empire's final battle. According to historical records, this cannon had been wielded by a single soldier who'd held a mountain pass against an entire army for 3 days before finally falling. The problem? Nobody could make it work. Professor Calthera, lead researcher at the archive, stood before the cannon's display case, listening to yet another expert explain why the weapon was impossible. The energy matrix is clear, the Threen scientist said, pointing at holographic readouts. Power source intact. Firing mechanisms functional. Structural integrity perfect. By every measurement, this weapon should fire. But it doesn't. Not for anyone. How many have tried? Calthera asked, though she already knew the answer. 247 beings from 32 different species. We've had the best weapons experts, the finest engineers, even battle-tested veterans. The weapon simply refuses to activate. Calthera looked at the cannon with frustration. The Vortons had been legendary warriors, their weapons feared across a dozen star systems. Understanding how this cannon worked could revolutionize modern military technology. But the secret had died with its creators 2,000 years ago. There must be something we're missing, Calthera said. Some activation sequence, some biometric requirement. We've tested everything, the Threen interrupted. Genetic samples, neural patterns, electromagnetic signatures. The weapon has no locks, no security features. It should work for anyone who picks it up. It just doesn't. A junior researcher named Plix approached nervously. Professor? There's someone here to see you. A human. Calthera's antennae twitched. I'm not taking meetings today. He says he can fire the weapon. The Threen scientist laughed, a bubbling sound. Another delusional amateur. We've had dozens of those. But Calthera was intrigued. Humans were new to the galactic community, barely a century since first contact. They were technologically primitive by galactic standards, but they'd already gained a reputation for unconventional thinking. Send him in, Calthera said. The human solution. The human who entered looked completely unremarkable. Male, middle-aged, wearing casual civilian clothing. He didn't carry any scanning equipment or testing devices. Just a small backpack and a confident smile. Professor Calthera? I'm Jack Morrison. Former infantry, Earth Marines. I heard you've got a weapon nobody can fire. Mr. Morrison, Calthera said carefully, this weapon has defeated some of the finest military minds in the galaxy. What makes you think? Because I've read about the Vortons, Jack interrupted. And I recognize what you've got there. He walked directly to the display case, studying the cannon with an intensity that made the other researchers uncomfortable. The Vortons were shock troops, Jack said. Elite infantry. They fought in high-gravity environments against overwhelming odds. Their entire military doctrine was built around a principle humans know very well: train the body until thinking isn't necessary. I don't understand, the Threen scientist said. Jack turned to face them. The weapon doesn't need a trained mind to fire it. It needs a trained body. It's designed to be fired by muscle memory, automatic responses drilled into soldiers through thousands of hours of repetition. Your experts are all thinking too hard. Calthera's translator struggled with the term muscle memory, but she grasped the concept. You're suggesting the weapon requires specific physical movements? A sequence? Not just a sequence. A way of moving. A stance, a grip, a series of motions so ingrained they become instinct. Jack smiled. Humans have been training soldiers like this for thousands of years. We call it drill. You do something so many times that your body remembers even when your brain doesn't. That's absurd, the Threen said. Modern weapons are designed for intuitive use. Point and shoot. Universal interface principles. Modern weapons, sure. But this isn't a modern weapon. This is ancient military hardware designed for an elite force. The Vortons didn't want just anyone picking up their weapons. They wanted tools that only their soldiers could use effectively. Kelthora considered this. It was an interesting theory, but how would you even know the correct movements? The Vortons have been extinct for 2 millennia. Jack pulled a tablet from his backpack. I've spent the last 3 months studying every piece of Vorton military art in your archive. Battle murals, tactical holograms, ceremonial statues. I found 17 depictions of soldiers using this exact weapon type. And humans are really, really good at reverse engineering physical techniques. He pulled up images showing Vorton warriors in various poses, the cannon held in different positions. See the way they're standing? Weight distribution, arm position, body angle. It's all consistent. That's not artistic license, that's documentation of proper form. You learned to fire an ancient weapon by looking at pictures? Kelthora couldn't keep the skepticism from her voice. I learned fighting techniques by looking at pictures, Jack corrected. Humans have been reconstructing lost martial arts for centuries using nothing but historical texts and artwork. This is the same principle. The Threen laughed again. This is ridiculous. You can't possibly. Let me try, Jack said simply. Worst case, I fail like everyone else. Best case, you finally figure out how this thing works. Kelthora made a decision. Open the case. The demonstration. They moved to the testing range, a reinforced chamber designed to contain the cannon's legendary firepower if someone ever managed to activate it. Jack carried the weapon with surprising ease, handling the heavy ancient alloy like it weighed nothing. Humans have higher gravity on their homeworld, Plix whispered to Kelthora. That's probably helping. Jack moved to the center of the range. He didn't aim at the target immediately. Instead, he began adjusting. Shifting his feet. Changing his grip. Moving through what looked like a kata, a practiced form. What's he doing? The Threen asked. Finding the weapon's natural position, Kelthora realized. He's letting his body learn how it wants to be held. Jack moved through the sequence 3 times. Each repetition became smoother, more natural. By the 3rd run, his movements had the fluid quality of someone who'd performed them 1,000 times before. Then he stopped. Set his feet in a specific stance, knees slightly bent, weight forward. Raised the cannon to his shoulder in one smooth motion. His left hand found a grip point that wasn't obvious from looking at the weapon. His right hand settled into a trigger depression so subtle most species hadn't noticed it. And then he breathed. Long, slow breath in. Hold. Exhale completely. On the exhale, his finger moved. The cannon roared to life. Energy cascaded along its length, following pathways carved into the ancient metal. The air itself seemed to ignite as a bolt of concentrated plasma shot downrange, hitting the target dead center with enough force to vaporize it completely. The weapon powered down, cooling systems humming softly. Jack lowered it carefully, a huge grin on his face. Told you. Muscle memory. The testing range was completely silent. Understanding the truth. How? Kelthora demanded. How did you know that would work? Jack set the cannon on a table, still smiling. Because Vorton physiology isn't that different from humans. Similar skeletal structure, similar muscle groups. When I saw those images of their soldiers, I recognized the stances. They were using techniques human soldiers have used for centuries. But the breathing, Plix said. The exhale. Why does that matter? Weapon firing is all about stability. When you breathe in, your body moves, chest expands, shoulders rise. When you hold your breath, muscles tense. But when you exhale completely? For just a moment, your body is perfectly still. That's when you fire. Every human sharpshooter knows this. The Threen scientist was frantically taking notes. The weapon is reading biometric data. Heart rate, muscle tension, breathing patterns. It only activates when the wielder is in a state of perfect physical readiness. It's a safety feature, Jack explained. Prevents panicked soldiers from firing wildly. Forces them to take that moment, find their stance, control their breathing. In combat, that discipline makes all the difference. Kelthera approached the weapon reverently. We've been trying to understand it intellectually. Analyzing its construction, its energy patterns. We never considered that the key was physical training. That's because most galactic species don't train like this anymore, Jack said. Modern soldiers rely on powered armor, neural interfaces, automated targeting. But humans? We still teach our soldiers to shoot iron sights, to fight hand-to-hand, to trust their bodies as much as their technology. Why? Plix asked. If you have better technology, why maintain primitive techniques? Jack's expression became serious. Because technology fails. Equipment breaks. Systems crash. But if you've trained your body, drilled those movements into muscle memory, you can still fight. Still survive. The Vortons understood this. That's why they were legendary warriors. The proposal. Over the next 3 hours, Jack demonstrated the weapon 17 more times. Each time, the sequence was identical. Stance, grip, breathe, fire. Perfect consistency born from hours of practice condensed into an afternoon. Other researchers tried to replicate his movements. Most failed. A few managed to activate the weapon briefly, but couldn't maintain the stable firing platform Jack achieved. It's not enough to know the movements, Jack explained to a frustrated Kralian soldier. You have to feel them. Let your body remember. Stop thinking and just do. Finally, Kelthera pulled Jack aside. Mr. Morrison, your government contacted me before you arrived. They proposed a deal. Let me guess, Jack said. Military training exchange? Humans teach physical combat techniques, aliens teach advanced technology? How did you? Because that's what we're good at. Humans don't have the best tech or the strongest bodies or the longest lifespans. But we're really good at turning soft civilian meat into hard soldiers who can fight under any conditions. It's kind of our thing. Kelthera's antennae quivered with what might have been amusement. Your government wants to establish training facilities. Teach galactic soldiers what you call drill? Makes sense. You've got technology that can level cities, but your soldiers don't have the physical discipline to use it effectively under stress. Humans can teach that. We've been perfecting it for thousands of years. And in return? We get access to your technology, your research, your knowledge base. Fair trade. Kelthera considered this. The Confederation Council will debate for months. They always do. But you've got influence, Jack said. You could recommend approval. Speed things along. Why should I? Jack gestured toward the cannon. Because I just solved a 300-year-old mystery in an afternoon using techniques human soldiers learn in basic training. Imagine what else we could accomplish working together. 6 months later. The Galactic Combat Training Facility on Kepler Station looked more like a human military base than an advanced alien research center. Obstacle courses wound through the grounds. Shooting ranges echoed with weapons fire. And everywhere, soldiers from a dozen different species struggled through exercises humans had been doing for centuries. Sergeant Jack Morrison, promoted after the Vorton cannon breakthrough, stood watching a mixed squad of Threen, Kralian, and Vexillian soldiers attempt a basic marksmanship drill. No, 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 Jack called out. You're thinking too much. Stop analyzing the weapon. Stop calculating trajectories. Just aim and fire. Let your body do the work. A Threen soldier lowered their weapon, tentacles quivering with frustration. Sergeant, my species evolved to process multiple data streams simultaneously. You're asking me to ignore my primary cognitive advantage. I'm asking you to trust your training, Jack corrected. When bullets are flying, you don't have time to think. You react. But you can only react correctly if you've trained correctly. Watching from the observation deck, Professor Kelthera stood beside General Thax, commander of Confederation ground forces. The grizzled Horrocks veteran had been skeptical of human training methods initially. 6 months later, his opinion had shifted. Your humans are brutal instructors, Thax rumbled. They push soldiers beyond what we consider acceptable limits. That's because humans understand something you don't, Kelthera replied. The body can do far more than the mind believes possible. You just have to train it properly. Below, Jack had organized the squad into pairs for close combat drills. Watching a delicate Vexillian throw a much larger Kralian using proper leverage techniques was surreal. It's not about strength, Jack explained to his students. It's about technique, timing, and muscle memory. Your body learns the movement. Practices it 1,000 times. Then when you need it, the motion happens automatically. The test case. The real test came when Captain Drell's unit was deployed to suppress a mining colony rebellion on Xanther 4. The rebels were well armed with stolen military equipment, and early intelligence suggested the operation would be difficult. Kelthera received the after-action report 3 days later. She read it twice, then called General Thax. Drell's unit completed the operation with 0 casualties, she said. The rebels surrendered after the first engagement. I saw the report, Thax replied. What caught my attention was how they won. The rebels had superior positions and equal firepower. Drell's unit should have taken significant losses. But they didn't. Because they used human tactical doctrine. The report detailed how Drell's soldiers had used basic infantry tactics humans had perfected over millennia. Fire and maneuver. Covering fire. Instinctive weapons handling under stress. Movements drilled into muscle memory functioning perfectly in combat conditions. The rebels were relying on technology, Kelthera continued. Targeting computers, automated systems, computational advantages. Drell's soldiers just fought. No hesitation, no overthinking. Pure trained response. Like the Vortons, Thax said quietly. Exactly like the Vortons. Which makes me wonder how many other primitive human techniques we've been ignoring. The expansion. Word spread quickly through the Confederation military. Units that had completed human training performed better in every measurable category. Combat effectiveness increased. Casualty rates decreased. Mission success rates skyrocketed. Within a year, every Confederation military academy had human instructors. Basic training incorporated drill, physical conditioning, and what humans called muscle memory training. Elite units specifically requested human advisors. But something unexpected happened. The training began changing soldiers in ways nobody had anticipated. Kelthera noticed it first during a demonstration. A Threne soldier, a species known for overthinking and analysis paralysis, executed a weapon malfunction drill without hesitation. The motion was automatic, instinctive, perfect. How did that feel? Kelthera asked afterward. Strange, the soldier admitted. I didn't think about what to do. My hands just knew. It was almost frightening. I've never experienced anything like it. You just experienced what humans call being in the zone, Jack explained. When your body is so well trained that conscious thought becomes an obstacle rather than an advantage. That's when you're operating at peak effectiveness. The Threne soldier's tentacles curled thoughtfully. My species has always believed superior intellect was our greatest strength. But in that moment, intellect was irrelevant. Only training mattered. Now you're getting it, Jack said. Intelligence is great for planning, for strategy, for understanding. But in the moment of action? Training beats thinking every single time. The cultural shift. The impact spread beyond military applications. Athletic competitions across the galaxy began adopting human training methodologies. Physical therapy programs incorporated muscle memory techniques. Even civilian occupations started using drill-based training for complex manual tasks. A surgeon from the Vexillian Medical Institute published a paper titled Surgical Precision Through Muscle Memory, Lessons from Human Training Doctrine. Emergency responders trained using human drill methods, reducing response times by 40%. Humans had introduced something the galaxy hadn't fully appreciated, the idea that the body could be trained to perform complex tasks automatically, freeing the conscious mind for higher-level thinking. Professor Kelthera wrote an article for the Galactic Scientific Journal. The title, The Forgotten Wisdom, Why Physical Training Transcends Technological Advancement. In it, she argued that the galaxy's focus on technological solutions had made them neglect physical training. Humans, developing in a relatively low-tech environment, had perfected the art of training the body because they couldn't rely on technology to compensate. The Vortons understood this, she wrote. They built their empire on soldiers whose bodies were as reliable as any machine. When we forgot this principle, we lost access to their weapons, their techniques, their effectiveness. Humans remembered what we had forgotten, that the trained body is technology's perfect complement, not its obsolete predecessor. The challenge. Not everyone embraced the new methods. Professor Sekther, a prominent Korean academic, published a scathing response. Humanity's primitive training methods represent a regression to barbarism. We have technology that makes physical training obsolete. Powered armor that enhances strength. Neural interfaces that accelerate reactions. Computational targeting that exceeds organic precision. Why should advanced species waste time on techniques designed for primitive humans? The debate raged across the academic community until General Thax proposed a demonstration. 2 squads would face identical combat scenarios. One squad equipped with the latest technology, powered armor, neural interfaces, automated systems. The other squad using standard equipment plus human training methodology. The scenarios ran for 3 days. Urban combat. Wilderness operations. Shipboarding actions. Every test military planners could devise. The results weren't even close. The high-tech squad performed well when systems functioned perfectly. But when equipment malfunctioned, when power supplies ran low, when automated systems glitched, they faltered. Soldiers relied so heavily on their technology that without it, they were nearly helpless. The human-trained squad adapted constantly. When a weapon jammed, they cleared it automatically. When sensors failed, they navigated by instinct. When communications cut out, they continued coordinating through hand signals and basic tactics drilled into muscle memory. Technology is a force multiplier, Jack explained during the demonstration debriefing. It makes good soldiers great. But it can't make untrained civilians into soldiers. That still requires discipline, drill, and muscle memory. The Vortons knew this. That's why their weapons required trained bodies to activate. Professor Sekther, watching the recordings, finally admitted defeat. I was wrong. Physical training isn't primitive. It's foundational. Technology should augment the trained soldier, not replace them. The legacy. 5 years after Jack Morrison solved the mystery of the Vorton cannon, human training methods had revolutionized the Galactic Confederation military. But the impact went far beyond combat. Engineers trained through drill-based methodology made fewer mistakes under pressure. Pilots developed instinctive responses to emergency situations. Even bureaucrats found that practiced routines made them more efficient. The galaxy was learning what Earth had always known, that training the body to respond automatically, building muscle memory through repetition, creating instinctive reactions through drill, these weren't primitive techniques. They were fundamental to excellence in any field. Jack Morrison, now a colonel and head of the Confederation Combat Training Command, stood in his office looking at the original Vorton cannon, gifted to him by the Grand Archive. Kelthera joined him. Do you ever think about that first day? When everyone thought you were delusional for believing you could fire it? Every day, Jack admitted. But I knew something they didn't. Humans have been building muscle memory for thousands of years. We know how to train bodies to respond automatically. We just applied that knowledge to an ancient weapon. You did more than that. You taught an entire galaxy that physical training matters. That the body is as important as the mind. That technology should support the trained soldier, not replace them. Jack smiled. The Vortons would have understood. They built an empire on that principle. We just rediscovered it. And improved it, Kelthera added. Human training methods combined with our technology. The Vortons' discipline enhanced by our science. It's created something neither of our civilizations could have achieved alone. The future. 10 years after the initial breakthrough, human-trained soldiers were operating across the galaxy. Mixed units combining human training doctrine with alien technology became the new standard. The Confederation military was more effective than it had been in centuries. But the real revolution happened in how species viewed themselves. For millennia, galactic civilization had believed that evolution toward higher intelligence meant leaving physical capabilities behind. Minds were what mattered. Bodies were just vessels. Humans taught them differently. Showed them that body and mind working together, instinct backed by training, action supported by intellect, created something greater than either alone. A Threan philosopher published a treatise called The Unity of Being, reconciling physical and mental excellence. It became required reading across the Confederation. Humans taught us, the author wrote, that we are not just minds piloting meat. We are integrated systems where body and brain must work as one. Training the body isn't primitive. It's recognizing the full scope of what we are. Epilogue, the lesson. 20 years after Jack Morrison first fired the Vorton cannon, he retired from military service. But his legacy lived on. Every military academy taught human training methods. Every officer learned about muscle memory. Every soldier drilled their bodies until proper technique became instinct. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Technology was powerful. Intelligence was valuable. But training, proper, disciplined, repetitive training that built muscle memory and instinctive response, that was irreplaceable. The Vortons had known this. They'd built weapons that only trained warriors could use. Not as a limitation, but as a feature. Tools for professionals, not amateurs. Humanity had remembered what advanced civilizations forgot, that sophistication isn't about removing the body from the equation. It's about training the body so well that it becomes a perfect instrument of the will. In museums across the galaxy, Vorton weapons were displayed with new plaques. No longer ancient artifacts of unknown function but masterworks of training-dependent design. And beneath each weapon was a quote attributed to Colonel Jack Morrison. Technology fails. Equipment breaks. Systems malfunction. But a well-trained soldier, one who's drilled their movements into muscle memory, who trusts their body as much as their gear, that soldier will always find a way to complete the mission. The Vortons knew this. They built their empire on it. We just had to remember. The galaxy remembered. And it changed everything. The end. From HFY Codex Archives, sometimes the most advanced solution is remembering what simpler times taught us. Thank you for watching. Let us know in the comments what skills you've trained into muscle memory. We love hearing from viewers around the world.